ever feel like you're just inexplicably drawn to certain people?
Yeah.
Like there's this invisible force pulling you towards them?
Right?
We're diving deep into Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendrix to uncover why.
Oh,
You specifically wanted to understand how childhood shapes our romantic choices later in life?
yeah, and we often don't even realize it.
Yeah.
We're carrying all this invisible baggage, these templates, these blueprints for love, all based on those earliest relationships.
Mm.
Hendrix's book is all about bringing those unconscious patterns to light.
Okay, so picture this. You walk into a room and bam, you lock eyes with someone across the way. Your heart skips a beat. Hendricks would say that initial attraction is like a giant flashing sign,
Mhm.
revealing your deepest needs and desires,
Oh,
often rooted in childhood.
He kicks off the book with Maggie and Victor's story.
Okay.
Maggie practically faints when she meets Victor.
Oh, wow.
Totally smitten.
Head over heels.
It sounds like a scene from a movie, right?
Totally. But Hendricks uses this to introduce a pretty intense concept.
Yep.
The imago basically were wired to be drawn to partners who resemble our caretakers.
Interesting.
And get this, he means both the good and the bad.
What's so fascinating is that it's not just about, seeking out the positive qualities of our parents, but also those negative traits,
Right.
those blind spots that might have caused us pain growing up.
So if your dad was super organized and your partner is obsessed with their sock drawer, that's an imago match.
It could be. Or like if your mom was constantly criticizing you
Yeah.
and you find yourself drawn to a partner who's quick to point out your flaws.
Oh, God.
Hendrix's theory suggests that unconsciously,
Yeah.
we're trying to recreate those early childhood dynamics.
Oh.
It's like we're seeking a do-over to heal those old wounds and finally get those unmet needs met.
Wait, so even if you had what you'd call a good childhood,
Right.
you're saying there's still these underlying needs shaping our love lives?
Exactly. None of us had perfect childhoods,
Yeah.
right? Even with the most loving and well-intentioned parents, there will always be moments when our needs, especially those deep emotional ones,
Yeah.
aren't met perfectly.
Of course.
Hendricks argues that it's those little disconnects, those tiny ruptures, that create what he calls invisible scars.
And these invisible stars, as he calls them, they influence who we are attracted to.
They do. And that's where things get really interesting, because these unmet needs can manifest in some fascinating and sometimes frustrating ways in our relationships.
Okay, so we've got this imago thing happening, this pull towards partners who resemble our caretakers.
Right.
But where does it come from?
Well, Hendricks says it's all about these invisible scars we carry from childhood.
Hmm.
He dives into these childhood wounds with a really relatable example.
Okay.
Imagine a toddler who's just discovering their independence, right?
Yeah.
It's that stage where they want to explore, to break free from their parents' side. Now, some parents might react to this with anxiety,
Right.
saying things like, don't go too far, you'll get hurt.
And that can create what Hendricks calls a fuser, right?
Yeah,
Someone who
cool.
craves closeness and might be terrified of being alone.
Exactly. That toddler learns to associate independence with danger and clings to their caregiver for safety.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to adulthood, and that fuser might find themselves constantly seeking reassurance in their relationships,
Right.
fearing abandonment at every turn.
Wow. I can see how that would play out. But what about the parents who are less available,
Right.
who maybe push the child away a bit?
Right. Imagine a different scenario where the parent, maybe out of their own issues, isn't as responsive to the toddler's needs for connection.
Yeah.
They might say things like, go play by yourself, I'm busy. This can create what Hendricks calls the isolator.
Huh. So the child learns to suppress their need for closeness and become fiercely independent. I know a few people like that, always needing their space.
And you can see how this sets the stage for those classic relationship clashes, right?
Totally.
The fuser is craving constant connection, while the isolator needs their space. It's like they're speaking different love languages without even realizing it.
Okay, so we've got these childhood wounds shaping who we are attracted to and how we behave in relationships. But what about this false self idea? How does that factor into all of this?
Ah, yes, the false self. Hendricks says that in order to adapt to our families and to society, we learn to repress parts of ourselves,
Right.
those emotions or desires that were deemed unacceptable. So we build this false self to protect ourselves from further hurt.
So, for instance, a child who's constantly told to toughen up or stop being so sensitive might create a false self that's stoic and emotionally guarded. It's like they're hiding their true selves behind this wall of armor.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. We even develop an inner critic that punishes us for having those unacceptable feelings in the first place. It's like this internal voice saying, we're not good enough just for feeling what we feel. Talk about baggage, right?
Wow, it's amazing how much of this we carry around without even realizing it. But here's the million-dollar question. How do these childhood wounds and false selves actually play out in our romantic relationships?
That's where things get even more interesting.
So we've been talking about imagos, those invisible blueprints for love,
Right.
and how those childhood wounds can create this false self we show to the world.
Yeah.
But here's where the rubber meets the road. How does all this actually show up in our relationships?
Well, Hendricks says that our partner's imago often matches our wounds.
Oh,
Like, think about that for a second. The very qualities that drew us to our partner
right.
might also be the ones that trigger our deepest insecurities.
It's like we're unconsciously seeking out partners who will recreate those early childhood hurts. No wonder relationships can be so challenging.
Exactly. And this is where the power struggle begins. We enter relationships with this unspoken hope, often unconscious, that
Right.
our partner will somehow magically heal those old wounds.
We're looking for that unconditional love and acceptance we craved as children,
Mhm.
that sense of being fully seen and understood.
Precisely.
Mm.
But here's the catch. Our partner is carrying their own baggage,
Oh, yeah.
their own unmet needs.
Yeah.
So those expectations we have,
Yeah.
those hopes that our partner will complete us,
Right.
are often met with disappointment.
Yeah.
And that's when the sparks start to fly.
So instead of getting the healing we craved, we end up triggering each other's wounds. It's like a recipe for disaster.
It can be. But Hendricks offers hope.
Okay.
He says that while only a small percentage of couples actually break free from this power struggle,
Right.
there is a path to move beyond those destructive patterns towards what he calls a conscious marriage.
Okay. I'm all ears. What's the secret?
It all starts with a huge mindset shift.
Ah,
Hendricks says it's not about finding the perfect partner.
right.
That mythical being doesn't exist.
They don't.
It's about recognizing that marriage is an opportunity for growth and healing for both individuals.
So instead of trying to change our partner,
Right.
we learn to use the relationship as a catalyst for our own personal development.
Exactly. It's about taking responsibility for our own baggage
Yeah.
and using the relationship as a mirror to understand ourselves more deeply.
That makes so much sense. But how do we actually do that? How do we move from blame and resentment to understanding and growth?
Hendricks offers a whole toolbox of techniques,
Yeah.
but one that stands out is the stretching exercise.
Sure.
It's brilliant, really. Instead of expecting our partner to intuitively know what we need and magically change, we learn to make specific requests that address those unmet needs.
Give us an example. How would that work in real life?
Let's say you crave more physical affection from your partner. Instead of criticizing them for being distant,
Right.
which would likely just trigger defensiveness,
Yeah.
you make a specific request. You might say, I feel so loved and cherished when we cuddle on the couch. Could we make a point of doing that for 15 minutes each evening?
It's about clearly communicating our needs, but not in a demanding or accusatory way.
Yes, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Hendricks believes that this shift, this focus on giving love, rather than just getting it,
Right.
can actually inspire our partners to grow.
So by consciously expressing our needs and stretching ourselves to become more loving and supportive, we create this ripple effect that can transform the whole relationship.
Exactly. And Hendricks compares this journey of a conscious marriage to the Israelites reaching the Promised Land.
Oh,
It's full of challenges, but ultimately it leads to something incredibly rewarding. A deeper love, a stronger connection, and a profound sense of personal fulfillment.
this has been such an eye-opening deep dive. It feels like Hendrix is giving us a roadmap for not just finding love,
Right?
but for becoming more conscious, self-aware individuals.
And ultimately, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Using the challenges and the triumphs of our relationships as opportunities for growth healing and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the ones we love.
So if you're feeling stuck in that power struggle, remember there's hope.
Absolutely.
By understanding these dynamics, we can break free from those unconscious patterns and create relationships that are truly fulfilling.
It's a journey worth taking.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into getting the love you want. We hope you've gained some valuable insights into the mysteries of love and relationships. Remember, the journey to a more conscious and fulfilling relationship starts with you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep